guys, Lamini speaking. I'm back again with another video. As you can see on the board, we have functions. So now this video is just going to be a video which is based on functions. They occur in both grades, grade 10 as well as grade 11. As you can see, just a universal question when it comes to a FET phase. Now, looking at these functions, I always give advices. At all times, you ensure that you read the statements thoroughly. Then you move to the diagram. People always jump straight to the diagram without looking at the statement. And if now you jump straight to the diagram without looking at the statement, questions like 5.3, they're gonna be a problem. Why? Simply because you'll find yourself looking for M and C in the diagram without seeing where is M and C. While that M and C is there on the statement standing for the equation of a straight line. You can tell yourself that it's very simple, you understand it. But once it's that time, you are one-on-one with your question paper. You're panicking, chasing time and all that. You won't see that. You understand? So now let's jump to the question. Make sure that next time you fix that when you're writing your test. Looking at 5.1, they're saying that the diagram shows the graphs of g of x, which is equal to negative x squared plus 4, and f of x, which is equal to mx plus c. Then a and b are the x-intercepts of g and c, which is the y-intercept of g, and graph of f passes through a and c. This is our graph of the parabola. The parabola is facing down, which simply means now it's sad. We always say it's sad, it's not smiling, and if it's sad, the value of a is supposed to be negative. As you can see here, the value of a there is negative. Remember, we simply say g of x is supposed to be equal to a x squared plus q. And our q stands for our turning point, and our a stands for the concave, whether it's concave up or concave down. So now you can simply see that ax squared there plus q, a it's negative 1, q is positive 4. Q stands for the turning point, right? And the y-intercept of the parabola. Now, looking at this diagram, our value of c is simply the parabola, and we have a and b there. Then we are fine, we are good to go. So now let's jump on the first question and look at how exactly can we approach these questions. So 5.1, it says write down the coordinates of c. Now if it says write down the coordinates of c, we jump and look at c is there, and we can simply see that c was stated that it's the y-intercept of g, and our graph of g, it's the parabola, it's facing down, that's c there. Now, looking at 5.1, we can simply see that c is supposed to be the y-intercept of c. There, the y-intercept, you know that it's supposed to be x is to y here. Now, the value of the y-intercept on the y-axis, it's supposed to be the value of y-intercept on the y-axis is supposed to be the value of c there, it's supposed to be 4. And we know very well that 4 is simply that y-axis, which is now 4. Here, the point here is 4, as stated on this equation, right? Now, let's look. Since here it's 4, then we know very well that the value of y here is 4. Then the basics of functions, we know that when it comes to the value of x, the value of x in the y-axis, it's always equal to 0, and the value of x, the value of y on the x-axis, is always equals to 0. So now, going back to the y-axis now, when looking at y-axis, we know very well that here it's going to be 0. Why? Simply because we know that y-axis, the value of x is 0, x-axis, the value of y is 0. Simple and straightforward. Now, let's jump to 5.2. 5.2 now. 5.2 simply states the simple fact. So 5.2, we determine the coordinates of A and B. That one is going to score us 3 marks. So since we have 3 marks, we're just going to look at our diagram. Remember now, if it says determine the coordinates of A and B, we look at where is A, where is B. A is in two diagrams. So it's in the diagram of a straight line and also in the diagram of the parabola. If you can look at A, if we consider finding A through the straight line, do we have the equation of the straight line? No, we do not have the equation of the straight line. But if we can look at A and B in terms of looking at the parabola equation, then it's going to be simple. Why is it going to be simple? Simply because this A and B, it's in the parabola, and the parabola we have the equation there. So now let's look at the g of x. G of x is equals to negative x squared plus 4. Now, if you look at g of x as equals to negative x squared plus 4, then that is when you simply know that in order for us to find the x-intercept, we let y to be 0, and in order for us to find the y-intercept, we let x to be 0. That's the basics of functions. Now, looking at this, remember g of x stands for y is equals to negative x squared plus 4. Now, let's look at y. Y is simply remember why we need to make y we need to let y to be 0. Why? Simply because these coordinates of a and b, they are on the points of the x-axis. So now let's look. We're looking for x-intercept. We let y to be equals to 0, and then now we put 0 in terms of y, then negative x squared plus 4. That's what we have now. Remember, we cannot work properly with the coefficient of x squared as negative. So let's make it positive. So we transpose everything that is this side to this side. So we're going to have x squared, since this one is going to change the sign, and 4, if it goes that side, change the sign to negative 4, which is equals to 0. Then now we have a simple binomial. So this binomial now, it's a quadratic, it's a difference of two squares. So we open two brackets, we have x here and x here, which is equals to 0. And then let's look at 4. We're looking for factors that can give us 4. So we have 2 multiplied by 2. And remember, in order for us to find negative, operation sign says we must put negative and plus so that we can find that negative 4. So now, once we have two brackets equated to 0, we equate each bracket to 0. So we're going to have x minus 2, which is equal to 0, or x plus 2, which is equal to 0. Then this one is going to be equal to 2, and this one is going to be equal to negative 2. Then this one, we can simply see that it's negative. And we know very well that from 0 going to that side, we have negative values. So our coordinates of A are going to be negative 0, negative 2 is to 0. Then our coordinates of B, they are going to be equals to 2 is to 0. Simple and straightforward. So looking at this now, we put 2 is to 0. We know the value here now that it's 2. Here the value is negative 2, so we put negative 2 is to 0. We are done with that. We already know the coordinates of C. So now let's move on to this question on 5.3. Now looking at 5.3, so that one, it gives us A as negative 2 is to 0 and B as 2 is to 0. So looking at 5.3 now, determine the values of M and C. As I said, we look at the statement. If you focus on the diagram, then you're going to have mistakes. Why? Simply because you are not going to see M and C while you are also chasing time. It's the other way around. So looking at f of x equals to mx plus c. Now f of x is equals to mx plus c. In order for us to find the value of m, we must ask ourselves, what is m? What is m? M is simply the gradient, since it's the coefficient of x and it's in the equation of a straight line. So now let's look. How do we find the gradient now? We find the gradient using y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now let's look. Y2, we need to find coordinates that lies within this straight line. So there must be 2. This is the straight line, and we can simply see that this point and this point are on the straight line. So let's take these two coordinates. We're going to take A, which is negative 2 is to 0, and C, which is 0 is to 4. Now let's look at it. This is going to be our x1, our y1, and x2 and y2 here. Now let's put y2. Y2 is simply going to be 4 minus. I always say after minus you put brackets for y1. We put 0. Then over x2, we check x2 is 0. After this minus, put bracket at all times and put the x2, negative 2. Why? Simply because these operation signs must multiply each other. So now 4 minus 0 is going to be 4. Then 0, then negative multiplied by negative is going to be plus. Then 2, which is 4 over 0 plus 2 is 2. Then 4 divided by 2, we get 2. Therefore, our m is going to be equals to 2. Then we have our value of m now. Going to remove all these calculations again and write our value of m, answering the question in a proper way now. So now our m is equals to 2. Then looking at the value of c now. C, in order for us to find c, we go back to the equation that we're given. Y is equal to mx plus c. Already we have y is equal to m is 2x plus c. But these two, we cannot solve this variable in this equation while it has 3 variables. We must have an coordinate so that we are able to substitute those coordinates on y and x, then we're left with c. Then we're able to solve one variable in an equation. So we're going to take negative 2 is to 0. Then we substitute these coordinates here so that we can find c. Our y is simply going to be 0, then 2. Our x is going to be negative 2, then plus c. Now we know that 0 is equal to 2 multiplied by negative 2, it's negative 4 plus c. When we take negative 4 that side, we're going to get c as 4. And then we've answered that question to say our value of c now. Our value of c is equals to negative, we said it's 4. And at the same time, without going to those calculations, we can simply look at the straight line. We know that very well that our value of c stands for our y-intercept even on straight line. So we look at the point there where the y point of this equation cuts the axis of y. So we see that it's that point 4. So now c is going to be equals to 4. Then moving on to 5.4, 5.4.1. Now, looking at 5.4 now, we simply have for which values of x is f of x less than g of x. We're going to go back to the graph now. We are interpreting that graph in such a way that we want to see where this graph of f is below the graph of g of x. Sometimes you can even substitute numbers just to make it simple. When it comes to these questions, most of the time they give people a problem. Now let's check. This thing you can even make it numbers. F of x, you put the values whereby you see that if you put the value of maybe for example 2 where on the graph of f and on the graph of g, you know that okay fine, the value of f that you will find is going to be less than the value of g. Then you need to interpret that in terms of the x-axis. But now let's look at these two. F of x less than g of x. Going back to the diagram, we want to mark those points whereby we see f of x below g of x. Here, from 2 here, let's just cut. Remember, we are looking at the values of x, right? Meaning that the x-axis. So we'll cut where we see the point of x. We cut the graph in terms of a broken line. So here we'll cut due to we see negative 2. Here already it's 0. Then there is a cut of 0 there. Then we have another cut here of 2. If maybe there is another coordinate of x, we're going to cut again. Remember, we're looking at the x-axis. Then now f of x is less than g of x. Let's look from this point here. We've cut the graph. Looking at this, we said the graph of f must be less than g of x, meaning that the graph of f must be below the graph of g. Looking at this part from here, going this side and here, can you see that the graph of f is on top of the graph of g? So we cut that. We cannot focus on that. Looking at these 2 points here now, can you see that the graph of g is on top of the graph of f, meaning that the graph of f is below the graph of g. The graph of f is less than the graph of g. So it accommodates that. So now let's check the values of x now for which this situation occurs. This situation occurs between this 0 and this negative 2. Why? Simply because this is the situation we can see it's only there. Now, this situation, the answer, this one situation, it's in between negative 2 and it's less than x. This x again, it's less than this one, which is 0. So our answer to 5.4.1, it's negative 2 less than x, x less than 0. We've accommodated the situation. Then now 5.4.2. Looking at this one now, I always say it accommodates the intersection. Why? Simply because when we multiply them, they must be less than or equals to 0. At first, we can see that where we find the values of f and the values of g and we multiply them, they give us 0. It's only this point here. So at that point, it's going to be x is equals to negative 2. But remember, it's 3 marks. Let's look at another one now. So f of x times g of x less than or equals to 0. There's no other intersection beside that one. But now we're going to look at it in terms of substituting the values. So if we substitute the values from this point here, remember this graph is to the infinity. So somewhere it's going to be here at the top and this one is at the bottom. So any value that we substitute this side from 2, we substitute from f and also from g. Remember, it's going to be a positive value multiplied by a negative value. And a positive value multiplied by a negative value, they give us a number that is negative. So positive multiplied by negative, it's negative. And it's going to accommodate the fact that this product is going to be less than 0, which is negative. Then we know that another one, it's going to be x greater than 2. Greater than 2. That's it. Then we are done. At the same time, if we put this, it accommodates the fact that we can include 2. Why? Simply because if we multiply the two values here, no, we cannot include 2. So we can also write this as x is the element of box bracket. We start from 2, then we keep on moving to positive infinity, and it's continuous. Then we are done with these questions. I hope you guys are good and you're just gonna keep on practicing these and you understand them. Then if there's something you do not understand, just leave something, let me know so that I can re-explain some factors within these. Still gonna move to hyperbola, exponential, then we are done. I don't know if we add the cubic function, but once we get to that curriculum, we're just gonna add the cubic function. Thank you.